The millionaire noticed bruises on his maid's face, and when he learned the truth, he immediately called the police. Before we continue this story, tell us where you're listening to us from today. The clinking of porcelain echoed in the lavish kitchen as Anna carefully set the teacup on the table. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to keep them steady. The faint aroma of chamomile filled the air, but it wasn't enough to calm her nerves. Across from her, the millionaire sat on the edge of the marble countertop, his sharp blue eyes fixed on a stack of papers. He wore a meticulously tailored black suit, his blonde hair perfectly styled as usual. Glancing up briefly, he said in a polite yet preoccupied tone, "Thank you, Alina." Anna forced a small smile and nodded. "You're welcome, sir," she replied before turning to retreat to the laundry room, hoping he wouldn't notice anything. But as she moved, the morning light streaming through the large French windows fell on her face at an unfortunate angle. He paused mid-sip, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the dark bruise stretching across her cheekbone, partially hidden beneath her left eye. "Alina," he said slowly, setting down his cup. "What happened to your face?" Anna froze, her back still turned. "It's nothing, sir. I bumped into the cabinet last night. I was just careless." His face darkened. "Turn around." She hesitated, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. "Alina," he repeated, his voice firmer. Finally, she turned reluctantly, and he stiffened at the sight. The bruise was worse than he'd imagined, and a thin cut marked her lip. When she moved her arm, he caught a glimpse of a red mark peeked out from under the short sleeve of her shirt. He stood up, his face hardening. "This wasn't from a cabinet," he said sharply. Alina's eyes welled with tears, but she shook her head quickly. "Please, sir, don't ask me about it. I'm fine." His voice dropped, low but firm. "You are not fine. Who did this to you?" Alina gripped the tray tightly, her knuckles whitening. "It doesn't matter. I just need this job. Please, I don't want any trouble." But Thomas Grayson, the billionaire and ruthless negotiator, was not a man to overlook such things. His tone softened slightly. "Alina, you've worked for me for 3 years. Never late, never a complaint. You're not just an employee, you're part of this house. You don't deserve this." A tear slipped down her bruised cheek as she looked at him. "It's my husband," she whispered. "He didn't want me working here. Said it made him look weak. When I tried to leave for work this morning." Her voice broke, and she pressed a trembling hand to her lips. Thomas clenched his fists. "How long has this been happening?" She shook her head. "Please, don't interfere. He'll be furious if he finds out I told anyone. I can't lose this job. It's all I have." "You can't keep protecting him," he said sternly. Alina whispered, "I'm not protecting him. I'm protecting myself and my son." Thomas's eyes widened slightly. "You have a child?" She nodded faintly. "He's 7. I send half my salary to my sister every month to care for him. If my husband finds out." The words caught in her throat, and she covered her face with her hands. Thomas's jaw tightened, fury burning in his chest. "You live in fear every day while he walks free?" Alina didn't answer. Suddenly, a heavy pounding echoed at the front door. Alina's body trembled violently, and the teacup rattled on its saucer. She stared at the door in terror. Thomas noticed how her hands shook, how her lips parted without sound. "It's him, isn't it?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer, but her trembling was confirmation enough. The pounding grew louder. "Alina, open the door." A deep, angry voice shouted from outside. Alina staggered back, clutching her bruised cheek. "He'll be angry that I'm late. He always says I don't listen." Thomas moved around the table and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay here. I'll handle this," she pleaded in a whisper, nearly sobbing. "No, please, don't make him angrier. He'll come for me later. He always does." Thomas looked at her. His gaze softened with tenderness, but his resolve remained unshaken. "Not this time," he said quietly. As the pounding on the door intensified, his expression hardened. He swiftly pulled out his phone and began dialing. Outside, the voice roared again. "Alina, open this door now." Alina collapsed to her knees, gripping the table behind her, her breath ragged as terror filled her chest. Thomas firmly held his phone, about to call security. But before he could speak, shouting erupted from outside. "Sir, you can't go in there," one of the guards yelled. Then came the sounds of a scuffle, heavy grunts, a sharp cry, and the pounding of heavy footsteps across the polished marble floor. Thomas's pulse quickened. Alina's mouth fell open in shock, her hands covering her face as she whispered, "No, no." The kitchen door burst open violently. A man in his mid-30s stormed in, his hair disheveled, his shirt wrinkled and stained. His eyes were bloodshot with rage, his chest heaving. He pointed a shaking finger at Alina and screamed, "Didn't I tell you not to work for him? Are you deaf?" Two of Thomas's guards rushed in behind him, their radios crackling with static. One of them had a bleeding lip. "He shoved past us at the gate," the taller guard panted. "He took us by surprise, sir. We're sorry." Thomas raised a hand to silence them, his eyes locked on the intruder. Alina shrank back, clutching her shirt, her voice trembling. "Please, don't hurt me." The man snarled and took a step forward. "You're coming home now. You've embarrassed me enough, Alina, acting like some high-class maid in a rich man's house. Do you think you're better than me?" Thomas stepped forward slowly, the sharp click of his polished shoes echoing on the tile. He planted himself firmly between Alina and her husband. "That's enough," he said coldly. The man scoffed. "Stay out of this. This is between me and my wife." Thomas's voice was steel. "Not anymore. You lost the right to call her your wife the moment you raised your hand against her." The man's face twisted in fury. "She's mine, and some rich bastard like you won't tell me what to do." Thomas didn't flinch. "Get him out of my house." Suddenly, the husband lunged, trying to push past him, screaming, "Don't touch her." But Thomas was faster. He seized the man's arm, twisted it behind his back, and forced him to his knees with brutal force. "You don't believe me?" Thomas hissed in quiet fury. "You want to hit someone? Hit me." The man groaned in pain as Thomas motioned to the guards. "Call the police. This man is an intruder. He assaulted my staff and violated every principle of decency and honor," Thomas declared. The guard nodded, pressing the phone to his ear. "Yes, sir." Alina stood frozen, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. Thomas turned to her gently. "Alina, it's over. He won't hurt you again." But she shook her head, her body still trembling. "You don't understand. He'll come back for me later. He always does. I can't run forever." His jaw tightened. "And you won't have to." Minutes later, the blaring sirens shattered the quiet of the upscale neighborhood. Two officers entered the mansion, their footsteps echoing on the polished marble. Thomas stepped aside as the guards handed the man over. "This is her husband," Thomas told the officers. "He broke in, assaulted security, and has a long history of abusing her. She's terrified of him." The husband struggled against the restraints, shouting, "You can't do this to me. She's my wife." Thomas cut him off sharply. "Not anymore. You're finished." As the door closed behind the police, Alina collapsed into a chair, her quiet sobs breaking free. Thomas knelt beside her. "Alina, listen to me. You're safe now. He won't return." She whispered shakily, "He'll find a way. He always does." "Not this time," he said firmly, his voice laced with warmth. "I'll file a restraining order. And if you're ready, I'll help you find a place where he can never reach you or your son again." Alina lifted her head, disbelief in her eyes. "Why are you doing all this for me? You don't even know me." Thomas's gaze softened. "I've spent years building empires and making money. But if I can't protect those under my roof, what good am I?" That night, Thomas personally drove Alina to a safe house for women fleeing domestic violence. Before she stepped out, he handed her an envelope. Inside was enough money to start a new life and a note promising her job security if she ever wished to return. "Take care of your son," he said gently. "You owe me nothing. You owe yourself, and him, a better life." Alina clutched the envelope to her chest, silent tears falling as she entered the shelter. Watching her, Thomas realized this was one of the few decisions he would never regret. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional and surprising tales. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from you all. Thank you for listening to Heart of the Story.